Volcanoes, nature's infernos, with massive force to destroy and create. And while their power to devastate has terrified us for centuries, we continue to live in their paths. Because many remain dormant for decades or more, populations forget how dangerous volcanic eruptions can be. And because the soil around them is rich and fertile, towns grow and flourish, at least temporarily, in volcanic areas. What we as health professionals cannot forget are these startling facts. In the 20th century, 76% of all deaths caused by volcanic eruptions happened in Latin American and Caribbean nations. In the past 10 years, nearly half of the strongest eruptions in the world were in Latin America and the Caribbean. Thousands died. Thousands more were injured. Many more suffered health problems, lost their homes, and indeed, their way of life. Right now, almost 10% of the world's population, an estimated 500 million people, live in areas where there are potentially active volcanoes. New volcanoes are rising in sometimes unexpected areas, and once dormant volcanoes can and do erupt suddenly and violently. It's only a matter of time before there is another major emergency. The question is, will you and your country be ready? Although planning for the eventuality of a volcanic crisis may be challenging, it's vital that we learn what we can do before the crisis and plan for its consequences. We can save lives.
There are two main reasons to be prepared for disaster, volcanic eruption disaster. The first one is that if you prepare yourself before the event, it's much cheaper, it's much more efficient. You're using the local system, and hence it's part of the development of your own country. The second one is that if you do that, you're using local personnel, and by doing that you're much more efficient because people know already the system.
Every volcano presents its own distinct dangers. This program will help us understand these dangers, what each could mean, and how governments can either avoid them or prepare to cope with them.
If a volcano erupts, there can be two types of injuries. One is the one produced by the hot ash and stone, which will produce burns, and second will be the respiratory problems, especially with the hot ash. On the other hand, the third thing that has to be taken into account is trauma. If it's a snow-capped volcano which produces a mudslide, you are going to have general trauma on top of the other two.
Although most think that it's the spectacular flow of lava that causes the most devastation, in fact, most lava fronts move very slowly, rarely advancing more than a few meters per hour. Lava flows are not commonly a significant danger during volcanic activity and are therefore not a high priority for health planning. An active volcano can shoot out huge rocks and blocks of cooling magma, sometimes even as far as tens of kilometers away from the crater. The thought of being hit by one of these fiery projectiles is frightening, but in truth, the danger of this actually happening is rare. Although a few were killed by rocks and debris during the eruption of Los Soufrières in St. Vincent and Sangay in Ecuador, this is not a major health priority during a volcanic crisis. During a volcanic eruption, being enveloped by a thick layer of ash from a volcano is a possibility. It is a myth furthered by press coverage, however, that ashfall is a major acute health hazard for otherwise healthy individuals. In fact, there is very little serious danger posed by volcanic ash. Studies done after the eruption of Mount St. Helens in the United States showed that coarse ash near the volcano and the fine powder-like layer that can fall even hundreds of miles away cause only few and very minor health problems. There were double the number of bronchitis patients and fourfold increases in bronchitis patients attending hospital emergency rooms, but few additional admissions and no deaths. Although it may affect those with ongoing respiratory illnesses, there is currently no evidence of excessive mortality due to cardiopulmonary problems caused by inhaling ash. Ash falls, however, can pose several other challenges for communities.
But suddenly, the ash start falling down and it blanket the whole area. There was a cloud of black ash just blank out the whole place, and the place became very dark. Your eyes mean nothing to you, it's just like you have no eyes, because the place was so dark, was so black that you just couldn't see.
Ash falls can cause the air to fill with smoke-like mist that will significantly reduce visibility. Impaired vision will cause the numbers of traffic and other accidents to go up. The roads can become slippery with rain, and windscreens can become smeared with a thin, wet deposit of ash. A major hazard is the collapse of roofs in heavy ash falls, especially if the eruption is accompanied by rain, as this doubles the weight of the ash. People can be killed by being hit by a falling roof and the inpouring of ash into the house. This is a major volcanic hazard in Latin America and the Caribbean. Eye irritation may lead to cases of conjunctivitis and corneal abrasions, especially for those who use contact lenses. While this places more demands upon health workers, the treatment is relatively simple and should not pose a serious problem. For patients with pre-existing lung diseases, inhaling ash can create breathing problems. Only the smaller particles, under 10 microns, can be inhaled, and their effects depend on factors such as the strength of their acid content, or pH. For most otherwise healthy people, lung problems will not be a health issue. The water supply from springs or rivers on a volcano may become contaminated as a result of the activity inside the volcano. But heavy ash falls can also contaminate surface sources of drinking water, such as rivers and reservoirs. Fluorine is a poisonous element that can be emitted in large quantities in a few volcanoes, and the ash can kill grazing animals as well as contaminate human drinking water. Chemical testing of the ash and water is required to exclude this possibility. Heavy collections of ash can also clog drains, sewers, and damage machinery in water treatment plants. Although uncommon, it is a definite possibility that chemicals or acid rain could contaminate some water supplies. As rainfall hits the area above an erupting volcano, it will dissolve the acid gases, in particular the highly soluble gas hydrogen chloride, creating acid rain. Acid rain can burn and kill vegetation. Though it does not present a direct health hazard, acid rain can corrode metal roofs and pipes and contaminate water supplies collected in outdoor cisterns. Over time, it could affect soldered pipes and weaken galvanized nails and steel roofs as well, increasing the number of household accidents and causing more water and sewage problems. Harmful levels of metals such as aluminum, lead, and zinc may contaminate drinking water where houses collect rain from metal roofs. Because of this, water supplies must be checked periodically for excess fluoride or toxic metals. Even if water quality is found to be safe, ash falls impact the delivery of water to homes and health facilities. Falling ash may clog pipes, and power outages could make water pumping impossible. All these concerns must be considered when planning for a volcanic crisis. Along with the lava and ash, volcanoes spew out gases such as water vapor and carbon dioxide. Sulfur dioxide can pollute the air for many kilometers away from the volcano, and this can cause breathing problems in healthy as well as asthma sufferers. Fortunately, in most eruptions, these gases are quickly blown away by the winds above the craters and diluted so they become harmless. It's possible, however, that certain relatively heavy gases, like carbon dioxide or hydrogen sulfide, may collect in low-lying areas on the volcano and occasionally cause fatalities. In addition, certain low-lying volcanoes can fumigate populated areas. In 1986, villagers had to flee from the foot of Concepcion volcano in the middle of Lake Nicaragua when this happened. There have been some rare fatalities associated with breathing toxic gas, but this, too, shouldn't be considered a widespread public health concern for the entire population at risk. When a volcano is underwater, especially in shallow areas, it's like a ticking time bomb. It could explode because of its lethal combination of magma and water at any moment. As Kikumjeni grows relentlessly toward the ocean's surface, there is a very real threat that one of its future explosions will cause a tidal wave or tsunami, powerful enough to destroy settlements on the shores of nearby islands. Tsunamis are tall killer waves which are so big they can run for a few kilometers inland and be very destructive. Other volcanoes in the Caribbean could trigger tsunamis should they become active and erupt. The risk is small, but is so serious it cannot be ignored. Unlike all the previous volcanic dangers, the hurricane of glowing hot materials speeding toward a community does pose major risks. In Latin America and the Caribbean, nearly 60% of all deaths due to eruptions are caused by glowing avalanches. And it's not only the first explosion that is the most dangerous. In Martinique, 10 major avalanches occurred in the first 4 months of the eruption. Hot gases, sometimes up to 900 degrees, propel solids and debris frighteningly quickly, traveling at speeds up to several hundred kilometers per hour.
The main phenomenon which we're concerned about in terms of hazards is what we call pyroclastic flows. And these are flows of red-hot rock and ash and air, and they move very quickly. They're not like lava flows, they're not a liquid, they're actually a mixture of solid and gas. They're completely deadly, they just destroy everything in the path, and you just can't survive in a pyroclastic flow. And so we have to be very cautious and move people out of the way well before we think those areas are going to get affected.
In the wake of a glowing avalanche, everything living, animals, plants, people, will be literally carbonized by the blowtorch temperatures and swept away by the cyclone of ash and rock. There is no chance for survival in the direct path of a glowing avalanche. Evacuation is the only solution.
One of the examples is that in 1902 with Montpellier, the whole city disappeared completely. One prisoner that survived to it because he was completely protected and in his prison, and so he was one of the few persons to be able to tell the story about what happened.
People lucky enough to escape by being near the edges of the flow may survive, but survivors will have severe and extensive burns, not only to their skin, but also to their respiratory tracts. Glowing avalanches are a serious danger to our communities. Almost as devastating as glowing avalanches, mud and debris flows, or lahars to use the Indonesian word adopted by scientists, are responsible for 42% of the recorded victims in the world. Summit glaciers, under the intense heat of the eruption, suddenly begin to melt. Enormous mud flows, clogged with debris picked up as they surge powerfully down main river valleys, can completely sweep away cities, often with little time to evacuate. In Armero, 3/4 of the population died. Some carried up to 15 kilometers downstream. Those who managed to be rescued often suffered serious infections from being trapped in the mud for hours or even days.
The problem in Armero after the volcano eruption was the mud. When the mud came in the evening, it caught most of the people unprepared, and when they realized that the city was being flooded, some of them tried to get out and they couldn't, and that's why we lost almost 21,000 people in Armero alone. The quality of the mud, as we discovered the following day, made rescue very difficult. The mud was hot when it came down, then it was cold due to the ice that melted from the volcano, from the ice cap, and that killed most of the people. They were either crushed or they drowned in the mud. And the health services were fairly well prepared to treat injuries, but not the amount that they got within the first few hours and the first few days.
If the area around the volcano has large ice caps or crater lakes, mud flow are a serious threat. Heavy rainfall at the same time as an eruption can trigger extensive runoff and even severe flooding. The rainwater can also mobilize the new or old ash deposits to form lahars, which can flow down and overwhelm nearby settlements without warning. Such a tragedy occurred in an eruption of Irazu, Costa Rica, when 30 people were killed. Lahars can recur during wet seasons and cause people to be displaced from their homes and land because of the danger and disruption they can cause. Torrential rain on hillsides, even months or years after an eruption, can also start loose ash and volcanic materials soaring down hillsides and threatening populations. Clearly, volcanic eruptions and the hazards they create are of great concern to health officials. The majority of fatalities in Latin America have been caused by pyroclastic flows and mud and debris flows. Not as dangerous, but definitely still safety issues, are volcanic gases and ash falls. Other threats like tsunamis, lava, rocks, and acid rain, although not usually as deadly, may pose problems for some communities depending on their location and proximity to the volcano.